You've been taught to be nice, to be polite, to avoid conflict, to always consider how others feel. And for most of your life it's worked, kind of. People say you're easy to talk to. They come to you when they need something. They call you the good one. But deep down you feel something else. Exhausted, misunderstood, used. Carl Jung warned us, the good man is not the harmless man. The good man is the dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. So what happens when you mistake being harmless for being good? You become a version of yourself that's easy to digest, but slowly fading from your own life. Being nice isn't always a virtue. It can be a mask for fear, guilt, and self-abandonment. In this video, we explore Carl Jung's deep psychological insights into the dark side of people-pleasing, emotional repression, and the hidden damage caused by chronic self-sacrifice. Because here's the truth. Many people wear niceness like armor, hoping it will protect them from rejection, conflict, or being seen as selfish. But over time, that armor becomes a prison. You lose your voice, your boundaries blur, your relationships become one-sided, and your mental health begins to suffer. Carl Jung warned us that denying the shadow, the hidden repressed parts of ourselves, doesn't make us good. It makes us weak, resentful, and quietly self-destructive. This isn't just about setting boundaries. It's about reclaiming your identity, confronting your shadow, and learning why being too nice can actually be dangerous to your relationships, your mental health, and your soul. If you've ever felt walked over, silenced, or drained from always putting others first, this message is for you. Let's be clear, kindness is not weakness, but niceness without boundaries is. And here's where it gets dark. Being too nice is often not about kindness at all. It's about fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of conflict. Fear of being seen as selfish. So you say yes when you mean no. You overextend. You forgive what shouldn't be forgiven. And every time you do, you abandon a small part of yourself. Jung believed this was a psychological imbalance, a split between the persona, the mask you show the world, and the shadow, the parts you repress. The nice guy persona hides anger, hurt, shame, even rage, because he was taught that those emotions are ugly. He believes that to be loved, he must be agreeable, even if it kills his authenticity. But here's the twist. The more you suppress your true feelings in the name of being good, the more your shadow gains control behind the scenes. On the surface, being nice seems harmless, even admirable. You avoid conflict. You go out of your way to help. You say yes to keep the peace, even when your soul is screaming no. And most of the time, people love you for it. You're easy to be around. You're agreeable. You never cause problems. But here's what no one tells you. This kind of nice has a dark side. Because when you make it your mission to be liked by everyone, you slowly begin to betray yourself. You start swallowing your truth. You minimize your needs. You allow disrespect just to avoid discomfort. You become a master of peacekeeping at the cost of your own inner peace. And over time, that's not just exhausting, it's soul-destroying. Because deep down, you're not being kind out of love. You're being nice out of fear, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of conflict. This is exactly what Carl Jung warned us about when he said, "The good man is not the harmless man, he is the dangerous man who has it under voluntary control." Let that sink in. He's not saying a good man should be passive. He's saying a truly good man is one who has faced his darkness and mastered it. He can say no. He can walk away. He can protect what matters, even if it means being misunderstood. He doesn't aim to please, he aims to live in truth. Real goodness is never about making yourself small. It's about becoming whole. And sometimes that means being bold, assertive, and even feared when necessary. Carl Jung said, "Every individual has the obligation to become conscious of his own shadow. For good people, that shadow often contains everything they've been taught to deny. Assertiveness, anger, selfishness, Even the capacity to say, "No, I'm not okay with that." Instead of confronting these qualities, you push them down. You smile, you stay quiet, you take the high road. But over time, that shadow festers. It leaks out in passive aggression, resentment, or deep inner guilt. You become the helper who quietly hates helping, the nice one who's slowly burning out, the friend who's always there for others but never for themselves. And what's worse, people get used to your niceness. They expect it. They begin to feel entitled to it. So when you finally draw a line, they get angry, not because you did something wrong, but because you've broken the illusion they built around you. The most dangerous thing about being too nice isn't just that people take advantage of you. It's that, slowly, without realizing it, you begin to resent them, but you don't show it. You bottle it. You say, "It's fine," when it's not. You smile while something inside you burns. And that's where the poison starts. Resentment is invisible at first. It looks like fatigue. It sounds like "I'm just tired." But what's really happening is your soul is angry that you keep abandoning it to serve everyone else. Carl Jung once said, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their children than the unlived life of the parent." Now think about that. What unlived life are you hiding behind your niceness? How many dreams have you buried to avoid conflict? How many truths have you swallowed just to be accepted? How much of your identity have you suppressed so others can be comfortable? This is how nice people, good people, end up bitter. Not because they're unkind, but because they've spent so long disconnecting from their real voice, that when it finally wants to speak, it comes out twisted with guilt, anger, and exhaustion. You weren't born to live in silent service. You weren't meant to shrink into roles that demand your silence in exchange for love. But here's the hard truth. The world doesn't reward self-betrayal. It rewards clarity, conviction, presence. And you can't have any of those while you're still stuck in nice mode. When you make being nice your identity, you unconsciously teach yourself that your worth is conditional, that love only comes when you're agreeable, quiet, accommodating. But here's the hidden cost. You begin to lose your center. You forget what you actually want. You don't even know where your boundaries are anymore, because they've been crossed so many times, by so many people, for so many years. You start to fear your own truth. You hesitate before speaking, constantly filtering your thoughts through one question. Will this make them upset? And that hesitation, it kills your authenticity. Your relationships become imbalanced. You attract people who take, not because they're evil, but because you've taught them to. You've trained the world to treat your self-sacrifice as normal. Carl Jung believed that this kind of repression leads to neurosis, a deep mental and emotional conflict between the life you live and the life your soul is begging you to step into. As already stated, think about this Carl Jung quote once more. Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. Your children, your partner, your friends, they don't just see your smile, they feel your disconnection. They absorb the quiet sorrow of a person who has spent years giving pieces of themselves away just to feel accepted. So ask yourself, are you being good or are you being small? Because real goodness doesn't come from shrinking, it comes from wholeness. From choosing to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. From choosing to protect your peace, even when it disappoints others. From choosing self-respect over approval. Note, real goodness requires power. This is where Jung flips the script. He didn't believe that goodness was about being soft or submissive. He believed real goodness requires inner power. The ability to say no without guilt, the strength to walk away without explaining, the courage to let people be disappointed in you and still feel whole. Being good isn't about being liked. It's about being whole, integrated, a person who owns their light and their darkness and chooses to act from a place of conscious strength. Because the most dangerous man isn't the angry man. It's the nice man who's repressed his anger for so long, he no longer knows who he is. At some point, being nice stops being something you do. and becomes who you think you are. You're the good guy, the one everyone can count on, the reliable one, the agreeable one, the one who never makes a fuss. It becomes your mask. And here's the terrifying part. You start believing that if you take it off, no one will love what's underneath. So you keep performing. You smile when you want to scream. You comfort others while secretly begging for someone to ask if you're okay. You laugh off the disrespect. You absorb the emotional mess of everyone around you. And the longer you do this, the harder it gets to answer one simple question. Who am I if I'm not who everyone needs me to be? Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear to fit in, to be accepted. It's not fake. It's just incomplete. He believed that real psychological growth comes from what he called individuation, the painful, beautiful process of stripping away the mask and becoming whole, integrating your shadow, owning your anger, your desire, your truth, not to act on every impulse, but to stop being afraid of who you really are. Because the truth is, you can't build real love, real self-worth, or real purpose on a version of yourself you've created just to keep others comfortable. That's not kindness. That's self-erasure. And no matter how much praise you get for being the nice one, deep down there will always be a part of you asking, what about me? If you've been the nice one your whole life, then saying no can feel violent. Putting up a boundary can feel like betrayal. Even asking for your needs to be met can trigger deep shame, as if you've done something wrong just by existing fully. But that shame isn't yours. It was planted in you a long time ago by a world that told you your worth came from being easy to deal with. So now every time you stand your ground, it feels like a sin, because somewhere deep inside, you still believe that being good means being agreeable, that kindness means silence, that love means self-sacrifice. But Carl Jung taught us this. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Let that land. Not love yourself, not tolerate yourself. Accept yourself completely. That means accepting your limits, your voice, your rage, your desires, your need for space, for rest, for truth. Not apologizing for them, not shrinking them down to keep someone else comfortable, but owning them openly, fully. Because boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. Bridges to honest connection, real intimacy, and self-respect. A man without boundaries will always live at the mercy of other people's moods. Their guilt will become his compass, their approval his drug. But a man with boundaries, he may lose some people. He may be called selfish, harsh, even cold. But he walks in truth. He sleeps in peace, because he knows this. If someone only loves you when you're silent, helpful, and small, they don't love you, they love your compliance. By now you may be wondering, if I've spent my whole life being nice, if I've buried my anger, my desires, my truth, what happens when all of that finally surfaces? Will I become someone else? Someone people fear? Someone I don't recognize? And here's where Carl Jung's most profound insight comes in. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's the shadow. Not evil, not something to get rid of, but the part of you you've disowned, the part that had no place in your nice persona. It's your assertiveness. Your enough is enough. Your instinct to protect, to confront, to demand what you deserve. And here's the truth. When you deny your shadow, it doesn't disappear. It just leaks out sideways. It shows up in passive-aggressive remarks, in emotional shutdowns, in quiet bitterness, in secret envy of people who speak their truth without apology. But when you reclaim it, when you look it dead in the eye and say, "You're part of me too," you stop living in fear of yourself. You don't become your shadow. You integrate it. You bring it under your control. And that's where your real power begins. Because a man who has faced his darkness, a man who has wrestled with the parts of himself he once ran from, is no longer ruled by fear. He doesn't need to be liked. He doesn't need to please. He simply stands, whole, awake, and grounded in his truth. Not soft, not hard, solid. At this point, it's clear. Being too nice isn't a virtue. It's a survival strategy, a mask worn by people who were taught whether through trauma, rejection, or conditioning, that love must be earned by being less of themselves. But here's the paradox. The more you try to be good in the eyes of others, the further you drift from what's actually good for you. And in that gap, something quietly dies. Your fire, your voice, your clarity. Carl Jung didn't call us to become perfect. He didn't ask us to erase our flaws. He called us to wholeness, to the bold, lifelong work of becoming real. That means breaking the addiction to being liked. That means risking disapproval in order to stay loyal to your soul. That means letting go of the idea that being nice is always the right thing to do. Because nice can be dishonest. Nice can be manipulative. Nice can be a cage made of guilt, shame, and fear. But real is alive. Real is present. Real is not always comfortable, but it's always true. So no, real men don't just smile through disrespect. They don't keep the peace at the cost of their own sanity. They don't abandon themselves to gain approval they never really needed in the first place. Real men don't do this, because real men don't betray themselves to be seen as good. They do the deeper work, the shadow work, the soul work, and they walk through the world not with a mask, but with presence, with clarity, and with power that doesn't need to raise its voice. Let's stop confusing niceness with virtue. Being agreeable is easy. Being invisible is easy. What's hard is telling the truth. What's hard is setting a boundary and standing by it when the room goes silent. What's hard is looking someone in the eye and saying, "This doesn't work for me anymore," even if your voice shakes. But that's where your power is. Not in being liked, not in being the safe one. Your power is in becoming the kind of person you respect, even if others don't understand it. Carl Jung didn't preach perfection, he preached integration. Becoming whole means reclaiming the parts of yourself that you've buried just to make others comfortable. It means facing the dark corners of your personality, not to be feared, but to be understood. Because once you integrate your shadow, once you stop running from your truth, you don't just become stronger, you become free. Free from guilt, free from resentment, free from the exhausting weight of keeping everyone else happy while silently suffering inside. And here's the honest truth. You cannot be truly good until you are fully yourself. Not the mask, not the nice version, you. So if you're done sacrificing your peace for people who wouldn't do the same for you, if you're ready to set boundaries without guilt, if you're ready to be respected, not just liked, then it's time to stop being the nice one and start being the real one. If this message hits something deep inside you, it's because you've been holding yourself back for far too long. Subscribe for more honest conversations like this, about shadow work, emotional strength, and the kind of self-growth that doesn't sugarcoat reality. Like this video if it spoke to you. Share it with someone who's stuck in the same cycle. And in the comments tell me, what's one truth you've been afraid to say out loud, just to keep the peace? Because your voice matters, your truth matters, and you were never meant to be a doormat for other people's comfort. You were meant to stand tall in your light and in your shadow, and become whole.